Hi, this is Irish Eyes True Crime. Today we're going to talk about the strange case of Nicola Bulley. Nicola, a 45-year-old mother of two young girls, went missing on the Friday morning of the 27th of January 2023 near a river in St Michael's-on-Wyre, Lancashire. Nicola worked as a mortgage advisor. Her disappearance sparked a high-profile police search and a massive following on social media. It was said that Nicola's phone was found on a bench, her dog Willow was alone, and that Willow's harness was found between the bench and the river on the ground. Right from the start, Lancashire police believed Nicola went into the river. It seemed the police gave Nicola's family no hope. They said they had no evidence of third-party involvement, yet they had no evidence she went into the river also. Police and divers began their search on the river on the very same day that she was reported missing, and continued that search of the river for weeks after she disappeared. Police and search dogs searched along the river banks. Divers, boats with sonars, and search dogs, along with underwater drones, searched the river and the reeds. Several search dog teams, drones, and an expert dive team came in to help with the search. This is the river, directly in front of the bench. This is where the police reckon that Nicola went in.
We searched a large area yesterday, a massive area, and sort of cleared that area. Now we've been tasked with a new area today to search round the sort of entry point where Nicola went in, up and then further up the river to the corner, just to clear that we've eliminated every possible scenario, and that's what we're looking at. So if something has gone in further up and it's drifted down, obviously that top part of the river hasn't been searched yet because this is the hot spot. So we're re-going over the hot area here just to double check that nothing has been left out or missed out. The police have done a really thorough dive job up around the bench area and down to the island part. Yeah.
But we need divers. Divers need to go back in again.
Divers will be going back in to clear a few bits where we can't quite get in with sonar, absolutely, when they do, yeah.
But I know you the phrase baffling, you've said that this is baffling you. I mean, how compared to what you thought you'd be at? Again, I come back to this, what you thought you'd find and where you are.
Because I don't know Nicola's in here, this is just a theory at the moment. It's on the bench, the phone was found on the bench, there's leads there, and normally she would be found by now if she was there, and that's still my view. You know, it's a difficult one. It's a very difficult one.
So how do you explain that to the family? I know you're speaking to the family.
I'm just telling the family as it is at the moment, and I think they're totally baffled what's going on. So, but everyone's pulling all the stops out to try and find Nicola the best we can. We're in a very difficult position here.
So when do you get to a point where you say our work here is done? We can't receive any more.
Over the next couple of days. So once we've completed all our searches on this length of river, as thorough as we can do it, so I can rule everything out, then I'll be happy that we can return home.
Okay.
Peter, yesterday we spoke to Nicola's friend Emma, and she described the very unusual situation that the friends and family are in, with absolutely no idea what has happened to her friend, and doubting the police theory that Nicola is in the water. Effective, as we're watching the last sort of CCTV pictures that we have of Nicola, effectively what Emma is hoping is that you will do such a thorough search of the river that you will find nothing and that will disprove the theory that Nicola ever went into the water. Is that, do you think, what your mission is? Could you possibly be able to say that if you find nothing, there is nothing to find?
Generally, Susanna, yes. I mean, bodies can get lodged in reeds and show up months later. The sonar won't go into the reeds, but that's the idea of the divers. But as I said before, it was originally searched where she supposedly went in. I mean, I personally think if I rule this stretch of river out today where we're working, I don't think she's here. I think there's probably a third party involved. I mean, I had a long chat with, you know, Paul rang me last night, and Nicola's partner. We had a long chat for about half an hour. You know, these people are grieving. It's terrible. I met the family again yesterday morning. It's a very difficult situation with lots of horrible things being said on social media and also criticising the police operation. Everyone is pulling the stops out here. Us, the police, they've got nothing to go on. That's the problem. We've just got a mobile phone, and detectives are working very hard to solve this in the background as well.
But is there a point, Peter, where you could categorically say, because of our equipment and because of the work that the police have already done, if you don't find Nicola in the river, could you categorically say she has never been in the river and swept out? She did not go into the river and something else has happened to her?
In all my searches I've done over 20 odd years, we normally find what we're looking for once we've got the intelligence that it's there. We're searching for a person. We don't know where she is. If Nicola is in this stretch of river today or tomorrow, I am happy that we can rule out this completely to say she is not here. And I, with all my experience, I can actually say that.
Police message is slightly different from the man leading that team. He is Peter Faulding, the founder of Specialist Group International. And Peter, from what I see, you're increasingly concerned that she's not in the river at all.
Yes, I am, Jeremy. I mean, my view is, you know, I've just come from the bench now, and again, below the bank where Nicola would have fallen in, it's about a foot deep onto rocks. So if she had fallen in, even if it was a foot higher, she would have landed actually on rocks, and she would have been able to hold on to them rocks. Yes, it's deep in the middle. It's about 3.5, 4 meters deep in the middle, but right at the bottom bank, I've sort of looked at it. If I fell in, I would land on rocks. And what we've got to look at here, Jeremy, is on day one, where Nicola's phone was actually found, the police thoroughly searched that area, underwater search team, and nothing was found.
And I know I've seen a number of your interviews, and you've done a lot of searches for people who've drowned, sadly. And you say that they don't tend to move very far from where they fall into the water. Is that right?
Yes, I deal with about 10 drownings a year. In 2016, we've done 16 in 8 weeks, unfortunately. But these people, they go to the bottom. You go to the bottom when you drown. You don't float. You sink to the bottom, and you tend to stay there. Even in a reasonably strong current, you don't go very far. You tend to drag along the bottom. And here, she's got to go right the way around the corner. What the key thing here is the police dive team were here that day, diving that area, and it was cleared. And since then, it was subsequently done again, and then it was searched by us with high frequency sonar. And there is nothing in that particular stretch of the water. And even if she had have got to the weir, she's got to get over the weir and under the weir that's all shallow and it's just a pile of rocks. So that's my view. Whatever the police, that's my opinion.
Carol's got a question here, Peter.
I was surprised by the police chief there, almost saying this is a missing persons thing. What do you think about that? Do you think they were right to do that?
I personally wouldn't have said that. I think my personal view, I've worked on lots of these cases with police, is just to say that, you know, we're keeping open all lines of inquiry at the moment. And I think that probably would have been a better move, just because I think we are focusing, obviously, everything on the river. But if Nicola's not there, obviously the police are doing other work in the background. I'm not discount that, you know, they're doing a lot of work. But I think just to say we believe she's in the river is probably the wrong statement to put out, I think.
Is the just if we then go to the supposition that she didn't fall in the river. Either she's gone of her own volition somewhere for reasons we don't know, or something very bad has happened to her. But seems to be a busy area. She was seen by 2 people while she walked her dog. How would anyone have hurt her or carried her away?
Well, there is various trackways. There's a trackway that runs down the side of the stream, back down to the road down the end, Jeremy. Yeah, it is literally disappeared into the blue. But I sort of say this again, that if she'd gone in the river that day, she wouldn't have actually gone far. I mean, it seems to me, like I've said this, the phone a decoy. I worked on a job years ago up near Scunthorpe, and it was where a lady's stiletto shoe was found by the river, and that was planted by the murderer. And then all the focus was brought to the river, and then eventually, when we started searching other areas, the police actually found her in a haystack when they got fresh intelligence coming.
Wow.
I know the thing is here, to be fair to the police, that they haven't got a lot to go on, and just the mobile phone, really.
Thank you very much, Peter Faulding, who will be searching the river again today.
He is a forensic search and rescue expert. He's the man leading that private search for the family. He's also author of What Lies Beneath. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much indeed for joining us, Peter. You have been speaking out to the media in recent days about your concerns that the police are sort of fixated on this idea. They've said repeatedly in press conferences, including yesterday, they believe that the most likely thing to have happened is that Nicola Bulley has fallen, slipped into the river, and they are searching for her body, and that no foul play has taken place. You believe that may not be the case?
Look, what I do with so many drownings every year, we average about 10 drownings, a number of suicides, Julia. And the thing is, here we've got Nicola. If she went in where that mobile phone was found that day, the police divers searched it that afternoon. I'm standing at the river now. It's very benign. This part of the river to get across is not a tidal river here. There's hardly any current here. And the police divers went in. And normally when someone drowns, they go straight to the bottom to the river, and they stay there. They hardly move. Within our experience, maximum 3 or 4 meters. That has to be a really strong current, because the body will just sit on the bottom. And the police divers are very professional. They've done a thorough search that day, and Nicola was not there. And since then, it's been search, and there's this stuff, albeit she's gone down to the sea. I don't believe that, because that's tidal over the top of the weir, and then you've got to get over the weir, and then it's very shallow the other side of the weir.
And yes, her body would have turned up. Now, you said when you started this search, called in by the family and helping them, that you said, look, if her body is there, we will find it within hours. You're now on your 3rd day of searching?
We're on a 3rd day, Julie, and we got a high hit rate for finding people very, very quickly. 20-odd years of experience of dealing with this. And I would like to say we are the official police dive team for the whole of the south of England. We work for the police every day, getting called in from all the forces across the southeast. So we're not amateurs. This is why we're used by the emergency services. And this just baffles me. This case, I mean, the police can have their own opinion. That's fine. But this is my personal view, and I'm not trying to speculate, but I'm allowed to do that, and that's just my professional opinion in dealing with these for many, many years.
Yeah.
It's just so odd, this one.
Well, indeed, and you've said, you think that a third party could be involved on whether or not the mobile phone. The crucial things here, we've got 10 minutes where we're not accounted for. There's no CCTV. Witnesses who've been located in the area have said, yes, they saw her here, they saw her there at this time or that time. She was on a business conference call. But we've got 10 minutes which are not accounted for. And the belief is that in that time she must have fallen into the river, the police seem to think. No evidence that of any damage to that side of the river, that the side whether or not she had fallen, or her dog was found dry minutes later, and the dogs, I understand, normally if an owner falls into water, they tend to bark loudly, they stay near the owner. Yeah. Her mobile phone left on that conference call on the bench. Lots of these things don't add up. The family member, I remember hearing a family member, I think one of her sisters, saying something like, people don't just vanish into thin air. But the concern is actually, this has happened a number of times. People do get abducted, vanish into thin air. People sometimes do go missing, and foul play is involved, or there has been an accident. What is your best theory then? If she didn't fall into the river, What do you think may have happened?
I worked on so many cases. A few years ago, we had a law attorney in Alston Ferry near Scunthorpe. We were called in to search the river for the police, and that was actually a big police operation. And there was a shoe found by the river, her stiletto shoe. She was buried miles away in a haystack. It was a pure decoy laid by the killer. And then we talk about the dogs. 2 or 3 years ago in Ripley, that a man drowned. We called in by the police to recover the man's body, and his dog was sitting there crying on the side of the riverbank, marking the exact spot. This is in my vast experience of working on cases, and I can tell you now, if she had gone in that river that day just down there, this is through my years of experience. Bodies don't just drift away like that. The police divers, in my opinion, we would have found her. The police divers would have found her that day. I'm standing near the bench now. You know, it's a steep bank, and why did she go near the river? She knows the area. It's just so odd, and that's just my opinion.
Yeah, indeed. I do think there is a risk, and again, I think this is obviously a concern of the family, and of course she's left her partner and 2 very young girls as well who've not had their mummy home for 12 days. I think our hearts go out to them. The idea that the police sort of, and we've seen this in many other investigations over the years, they can get very fixated on one idea, right? She's in the river, that's the most likely thing. We haven't got any evidence of a dodgy man in a car or nearby or sounds of hearing anyone struggling. So we think that's what's happened, and then they get fixated on that, and although they go through the motions of doing other things like checking other CCTV and people in the area, they don't put as much effort into it as they would otherwise.
Well, I think everybody just needs to keep an open mind here, Julia. That's what it needs to be. It's not she's in the river. We don't know where she is, and I think that's probably the best thing to say. We don't know where Nicola is, and I think that's the best thing to say at the moment. I mean, if a body does go in the river, yes, it can get lodged under trees. It can get lodged under what we call strainers. We haven't got any just here. But if the body had gone over the weir and the water was higher that day, yes, it could get lodged in the reeds. I accept that, which the sonar won't find. And people appear 2 or 3 months later. But that's highly unlikely in this case, and it's getting from here to the weir is the problem. She's got to get from here to the weir.
Got this very strange ongoing case of Nicola Bulley. So Nicola was last seen Friday, the 27th of January, dropped her children off at school. She then goes to walk her dog, Willow, at a nearby area alongside the River Wey. A massive police search is now underway. And the police have said they remain open-minded and that they don't think that there is anything suspicious occurred. Nicola's parents have come out, in fact, today and yesterday and said there is something wrong. She has to have been taken because she wouldn't just leave her dog and her 2 daughters. Since her disappearance, Nicola's phone has been found. So it was still connected to a call that she had with work. And beside that bench was her dog, without a harness. It just doesn't make any sense.
The disappearance of Nicola Bulley has gripped the public's attention, but there is now a divide between the police's hypothesis, what the family believe, and what the evidence is telling us. And tomorrow, I'm going to bring you a special Talking True Crime podcast solely looking at Nicola's case. There's a number of things that concern me, and in particular the use of words by Superintendent Riley. She has a hypothesis that Nicola fell into the water. Hypothesis concern me because it then means that the senior investigating officer is looking to find evidence to support the hypothesis. So what is the evidence that Nicola fell into the water? Well, there's no indication on the riverbank. The dog was bone dry. Spaniels love water, so why wouldn't it have gone into the water? The flow on the river, the bend on the river, the depth of the river are not supportive of Nicola's body vanishing. It would have been found by now. I'm also concerned that Superintendent Riley says on the balance of probability. That's not a terminology that she should be using. She's still got witnesses to trace. There's still 10 minutes unaccounted for. She can't be certain yet. And until you're certain, keep everything open in terms of what you're looking for. She also refers to it as being a safe area. Well, crime happens everywhere. Even in the safest of villages and towns, people get murdered, people get abducted. So that has no bearing on this at all. With every hour that passes, Nicola's family and loved ones' heartache deepens. What we need now from the police is clear evidence, clear words, and proper investigation, not just in terms of looking for Nicola through the CCTV, but also let's get the experts in. Let's get the experts to do the water so that we know definitively she hasn't been in there. So join me tomorrow, midday, Monday, the 6th of February, where I'll be talking about Nicola Bulley's case. Day 11, and we still don't know where Nicola Bulley is. The area beyond the weir has now been searched by Peter Faulding and Specialist Group International, and she is not in that area. Just beyond the weir, it's stones, and she certainly wouldn't be travelling beyond that. Also, we know that the area by the bench has also been thoroughly searched by divers, and had she have gone in that area, as is believed by the police, she would have sunk straight to the bottom. So she's not in there, she's not downriver of that. So where could she be? Well, one option is upriver. Perhaps the phone on the bench is a little bit of a red herring. Actually, it is not a location that's relevant. Perhaps somebody picked up the phone, a walker, or even a third party involved and put the phone onto the bench. So options now, she is upstream somewhere, upriver, and that's where they're going to be searching today, if indeed she's in the water. If she's not in the water upstream, then she's gone. And either the two options. One, she went of her own accord to set up a new life or move on or deal with whatever she's got going on in her life. Or two, a third party has been involved in her abduction. At this present moment in time, we are moving towards certainty with that river. We will know within the next few days whether or not she's in that river. And at that point, the police will then have to go right back to the drawing board, throw their hypothesis out the window and start to look at where she could possibly be and whether or not a third party is involved.
So here we are, just behind me is the river wire. The bench is just up here where the mobile phone was found, face up, and the dog harness around this area. There's conflicting elements in terms of exactly where that dog harness was found. Paul says that the harness was found on the river bank here, and other people say that the harness was found at a distance between the river and the bench. What is striking is that if you look at this river, there is very little movement in it. Just at the edge here, at a depth of probably about a foot and a half, it's full of stones. So if she did go in, her first port would be to hit the stones. But actually, if you end up even in there, you're not going to move. Even if there's a bit of flow on here, I cannot see her body having been moved. And then, even if it did move, and there was enough of a flow, you can see in the distance there is a lump of earth and bushes in the middle of the river. You'd have to negotiate through a relatively small gap down the side. It just doesn't stack up for me that she's fallen in this river and her body has then travelled beyond. And it has to have travelled in a matter of 10 to 15 minutes along an area which is regularly used by dog walkers and very visual. I just don't buy it.
After listening to everything that Peter Faulding had to say and Mark William Thomas, I really don't believe that Nicola either had an accident in the river or committed suicide. I don't think she was in the river at all until that she was put in afterwards. I really believe an expert in rivers over people that don't have the experience in it. As Peter said, if she had went in at the bench, and that's what the police believe, they gave the family no hope at the time. Even though they said they were open to new information, they never really went past the bench area. If she had fell in at that bench, she would have been found right in front of the bench. Divers were there straight away. You might as well say straight away. They were there that day. There's no way her body could have moved in that amount of time to the weir. She wasn't even at the floating stage. And her body would have been in a position of, sorry to be morbid, but bum to the air and hands and legs dangling down. And that's even, she would have had to be at the floating stage to get down that far. And how would, in that position, even if she was at the floating stage, would she get over the weir? I don't think it's possible. Some people say that perhaps the dog knocked her into the water when she was trying to put the harness on. I can't understand why she would be putting the harness on right close to the river. But let's say if that was the fact, which we know it wouldn't be because her body would have been in front of the bench in the river. If she was holding onto the harness trying to put the dog in and she slipped backwards or the dog hit off her and knocked her in, she would have been still holding onto the harness. When you get a fright like that, or even in water, there's such a thing as the deck grip, where you grab onto something. She wouldn't have dropped that harness. She would have been still holding onto that harness. The harness would have been in the river. So I don't think it's possible that she was beside the river putting the harness on. Also, it's a very hard thing to drown yourself if you're a good swimmer. To actually stop your body from fighting, you don't. You do try to fight to stay alive. So it's not an option I think Nicola would have chose. And definitely not in that area. It was too shallow. Like, you try to fight. Then you have the dog. And we all know, we've all seen the photographs. We know the dog loves the water. There's lots of pictures of the dog in the water. I 100% believe that Willow would have went into the water. Would have been barking at the water, would have been running up and down along the river. That's exactly where the dog would have been. Willow didn't show any interest towards the river because the river didn't mean anything. But everything that I've seen so far and looked into, and I just cannot see it. I 100% believe that Nicola didn't have an accident there at that bench, and she definitely didn't unalive herself at that bench. Her body would have been found. There's no way that with the amount of searching that went on, that her body wouldn't have been found in there and before the weir. I'm going to leave it there for part 1. Keep an eye out for part 2. I'm going to leave you with a short clip from Professor Caroline Roberts. She'll explain how bodies behave in rivers. Thank you for watching. This video is for entertainment purposes only, and everything in this video is fair use.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm particularly pleased to welcome such a great audience. It's interesting to know what attracts people, isn't it? And I hope that my husband said to me that I'll have to repeat the sex and violence in my subsequent lectures this year as well. That might be more tricky. But first of all, welcome to the lecture. My professorship is sponsored by the Frank Jackson Foundation, and I do want to offer them my thanks for this second year. My series this year is entitled Britain in Troubled Waters, but lest anyone thinks that they're entering the seamy world of economics, global economics, it's not that. It's going to be broadly scientific, concerned with environmental issues and specifically with the world of water. So that's the series as a whole. This lecture, this particular one, is a little different in that I'm going to be talking about the even seamier world of murders and murder inquiries. And I'm going to talk particularly about some cases with which I'm familiar myself. The bodies of murder victims, either whole or in pieces, often finish up in rivers and canals. And for about the last 15 years, I've been working with various UK police forces, including the military police actually, in applying the basic principles, or some basic principles of environmental science to assisting the police in what are really very tragic and gruesome settings. We're looking at where bodies might have gone to, or alternatively come from, if they've been found. And I want to take you really from the details of particular cases to the general principles of tracing bodies. And just to paraphrase a popular TV series, I like to think of the river as a silent witness, because there are clues we can use and evidence that we can gather to establish more about what may have happened or what cannot have happened in particular circumstances, so that we can help the police. What happens when the body gets up into the flow? Okay, now, what actually happens, and here's our erstwhile body again, is that river velocities, particularly in flood conditions, they move relatively slowly near the bed, and they move much faster towards the top. The peak velocity is just below the surface, actually. And what happens with this is that two things. First of all, you've got gas in the body, and secondly, this is like an aeroplane lift, and as the water flows over the body, it tends to draw it up into the flow. And therefore, at this point, it rises up and goes along with the velocity of the water. So the thing that would dictate how far it got would be whether there were any obstacles in the way. And we can look at that in a minute. Grounding. What happens to it at the end of the pathway? In this particular case, it could be some time later, or it depends where the body's been in the interim, but we've got a body, perhaps I've described it here as losing its integrity. The gas has come out, it's rotted through, it falls to the bed, or it could be trapped behind an obstacle, or it could be trapped in sediment, or along the side of the river, or in a vortex at the side of the water, at the side of the river. Now, if it's the water's very turbulent, or it's saline, or it's very cold, the water is more denser, and the body is going to float more easily. In this particular case, the body was still found in fresh water, but 7 or 8 miles below York. So we've got quite a complex modelling job here to work out where the body might go in this particular instance.